You are listening to continuing coverage of the trial of Chad Daybell from True Crime Today and the Hidden Killers podcast. Let's go back to the courtroom.
All right, after sidebar, the court is again striking that last question. Mr. Wixom, if you'd move on to another question, please.
Certainly. Just a last couple of questions. Can you explain again the timing of when Mr. Daybell had left the property and as to when you'd found out that JJ's remains had been found?
Later, I had discovered that it was simultaneously, meaning as Chad was leaving, detectives were coming around the house and saw him leaving and advised me to stop him.
Judge, I'm going to move to strike its hearsay.
Response, Mr. Wixom.
Your Honor, I can re-ask the question.
Very well.
Yeah. When you had stopped Mr. Daybell and had him get out of the car and come back to the back, you indicated that that's when he was met by the 4 or 5 officers, including Lieutenant Ball. Is that right?
Correct. Yes.
And we just saw the video where the first thing Lieutenant Ball said was, "We found JJ's remains."
Yes.
Would you agree with that?
Yes.
That happened how long after Mr. Daybell had gotten his car and drove away?
Just prior.
Moments, seconds? What's your best recollection?
I wasn't back there, so I don't know the exact time they located him. But
I'm asking the statement from Lieutenant Ball to Chad.
Right.
That timing. How long was that statement made to him? How much earlier had he driven away?
Oh, just within minutes.
And when you were there helping with Tylee's remains, I think you testified earlier that you weren't directly involved with the recovery of JJ's remains.
Correct.
But you were on scene and you made observations about that.
Yes.
Are you aware of whether or not, pursuant to that search warrant or the way the search was conducted, was law enforcement looking inside the house for remains?
I'm not aware of that.
Okay.
I can't testify to that.
The whole time were you there, did you see any law enforcement going inside the house?
Just at the beginning when they made contact.
And then after that, did they all go outside?
Yes.
Okay. So as far as you are aware, all of the search was happening outside on the property.
Yes.
Is there any question that you have as to the direction that Chad was looking on your patrol cam when he looks back over his right shoulder? What direction was he looking?
Judge, that's a compound question, and he's asking an affirmation from this witness. I'm going to object.
Well, on the compound, it's sustained.
What direction was Chad looking when he was looking over his right shoulder in the patrol cam?
In the direction of the fire pit and pet cemetery.
You were asked about this several times by Mr. Pryor. Is there any question that, regardless of what else he may have been able to see or look at, that general direction was right at the pet cemetery?
Judge, this has been asked and answered by counsel.
It's
Thank you.
asked and answered.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right.
Judge, there were some issues that were brought up. I'd like the opportunity.
In limited scope, all out, Mr.
Thank you,
Pryor.
Your Honor. Now, officer, I heard an interesting comment from you. As you were testifying, you made a comment that I subsequently learned. Did you talk to anybody about your testimony at the break in this case?
No.
You didn't talk to any other law enforcement?
No.
So when you said that you subsequently learned, when did that knowledge come to you?
What are you referencing?
I'm referencing the fact that you subsequently, I forgot what the context of that was. We're going to move on, Judge. And it may come to me. I want to clarify a couple of things. When you say that Mr. Daybell left when he learned about finding remains on his property, was that when he was parked in the driveway?
In his residence?
Yeah.
When he left Emma's residence in his vehicle, shortly after I learned that JJ's body was found.
Okay, so and that's what I'm trying to clarify a little bit. So Mr. Daybell was parked in the driveway, then he went over to Emma's residence, and it's unclear, and I understand that we don't know whether he was there for an hour and a half or for 2 hours in Emma's residence, right?
Yes.
And at that point, he didn't know anything about anything being on the property that has been located by law enforcement at that point. Would you agree with that?
I don't know what he could see from there.
Okay, but he wasn't told by anybody that that they found anything at that point, correct?
Not by me,
Right. Or anybody else.
not that I know of.
Right. And then when he gets in his vehicle and he drives away, the prosecutor eloquently used the words fleeing, but we don't know what he was thinking at that point, do we?
No,
And only after he was stopped by you and those other several officers and notified what was going on, that's when he learned about it, after he drove away and after he had driven down the road, correct?
I can't testify to what he knew.
Okay, but he was told about the remains at that point. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes.
All right, I have nothing else, Judge. Thank you.
All right, that will conclude the testimony of this witness. Is this witness going to be recalled by either side?
I may recall him, Judge.
We may call him later by the state, Your Honor, but he can be excused for today as far as the state is concerned.
All right, well, Detective Wheeler, if you are to be recalled, again, you're still under an exclusionary order, so you are not permitted to view any of the footage of the trial, the testimony that's being live streamed, or discuss your testimony further until you return to testify. Otherwise, you may be excluded from testifying. So please keep that admonishment in mind in between now and when you may be recalled in the case. With that, then that will conclude this Detective Wheeler's testimony. And let me inquire from the state. Do you have another witness we can get started with before we take lunch?
No, we could. We could begin with Lieutenant Joe Powell.
Let's go ahead and get a next witness started and try to go till noon before we take lunch, please.
Do solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me.
All right. Lieutenant Powell's been sworn. Before we get started with testimony, let me just indicate again, there's an exclusionary rule in this case. Lieutenant Powell, have you been observing any of the trial testimony in this case since it started?
No.
All right. Have you discussed anyone else's testimony that's come before you in the trial?
No.
All right. With that in mind, Mr. Wixom, then you can go ahead and inquire on direct examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Lieutenant Powell.
Good morning.
Will you please state and spell your full name for the record?
Joseph Powell, Powell.
And where do you work?
Vermont County Sheriff's Office?
What is your lieutenant, correct?
Yes.
How long have you worked for that office?
22 years.
Have you ever worked as a law enforcement officer anywhere else?
No.
How long have you been a detective?
I was a detective for about 4.5 years.
What was your prior rank?
Patrol?
And have you been post-certified?
Yes.
Could you briefly explain to the jury what that involves?
You go to the post academy. When I went through, it was 12 weeks of training.
Have you ever received any additional training or certification?
Yes. They require 40 hours every 2 years. So the continuing education.
So over the last 22 years, roughly 11 times you've had to get 40 hours of training.
That just went in effect, but yeah, there's lots of hours of training.
Did you get any specific training as a detective?
Yes.
And did you work as a detective prior to becoming a lieutenant?
Yes.
How many years?
About 4.5 years.
I want to, well, first let me ask this. As a lieutenant, is it ever part of your role to become involved with unattended deaths?
Yes.
Could you just explain to the jury, what does that term mean, an unattended death?
There's nobody around when they wake up, they discover somebody's dead. There's nobody around to know what happened.
So why would law enforcement want to be involved and just look at that situation?
To see if there's any foul play.
I want to draw your attention back to nearly 5 years ago, back in October of 2019. Do you recall ever being involved in an unattended death of Tammy Daybell?
Yes, I was notified of her unattended death.
And who are you notified by?
Detective Mattingly.
Why did he notify you?
When there's an unattended death in Fremont, they notify the lieutenant, the chief deputy, and the sheriff.
What's the purpose to have your subordinates notify you about that?
So if there's any questions or they need help with the part of the investigation. And so the sheriff knows what's going on in the county.
Excuse me. What was the date of that? Do you recall?
October 19th, 2019.
At that point in time, what was your understanding as what the investigation had determined about Tammy's death?
Natural causes.
Shortly after the 19th of October, were you ever contacted by law enforcement from Gilbert, Arizona?
Yes.
And what date did that happen?
October 31st, 2019.
How were you contacted? Was it in person, by phone, email? How did
I was contacted by phone.
And what did you learn from that contact?
They was inquiring about Tammy Daybell's death, asked if they could get a copy of the report, and asking for assistance.
Okay. Do you recall, did they say anything else about Tammy Daybell's death and the reason for their request for the report?
Judge calls for hearsay.
Yes, sustain.
After the phone call, what did you decide to do in regard to Tammy Daybell's death?
I sent him a copy of the report.
And what about you personally? Did you take any steps to look at the case?
Yes, I reviewed the report and then later on ended up getting her medical records.
Okay. Well, we'll pause here. So Gilbert, Arizona contacted you about Tammy Daybell's death.
Yes.
Did they request any other assistance or help with anything else?
Yes, they asked to
Judge,
locate.
objection calls for hearsay.
Said a request isn't offered for the truth.
Overruled. You can answer.
They asked if we could help locate a 2018 gray Jeep Wrangler with Texas plates.
Did you get any information as to why you were seeking to locate that?
They believed that it was in Fremont County.
Did they tell you why they wanted to find the Jeep?
It was involved in an attempted shooting.
Did they give any names in terms of that were in connection with that shooting?
Yes, Alex Cox, Lori Vallow, and they believe they had ties to Chad Daybell.
Did the name Charles Vallow ever come up
I don't recall for sure.
at that time? You
At
don't
that
recall?
time.
Okay. So they asked you to look for a Jeep. What did you do next?
Drove out, they gave me the address of 202 North, 1900 East. It's in Fremont County. So I drove out to that residence.
Did you determine who lived there?
Chad Daybell.
Did you find the Jeep?
No,
Do you recall what date it was that you drove out there?
October 31st, 2019.
What did you do after you determined that the Jeep wasn't there?
I notified Gilbert that we couldn't locate the Jeep there, and if they needed more assistance to let us know.
And did you in fact get more assistance from them?
Yes, the next day, November 1st, I received an email asking me to check a couple more addresses.
And did you do that?
One was a P.O. box in Sugar City, so I knew it was a post office, so I did not go there. But the next one was 565 Pioneer Road in Rexburg, and yes, we did go there.
And what did you find there?
We surveilled the residence, but never located the Jeep.
When you say surveilled, can you explain that a little bit more to the jury? What your process is?
We sat a ways away from the residence and watched it and watched for vehicles coming and going, people coming and going.
And did you observe anybody coming and going from that residence?
Yes,
Who did you observe?
Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow.
Prior to engaging in that surveillance, had you done anything to identify what Chad Daybell looked like?
Yes,
How did you do that?
driver's license photo.
Did you do the same for Lori Vallow?
Yes.
And how did you do that?
Gilbert, Arizona had sent a picture.
Did you eventually, let me withdraw that. Do you recognize Chad Daybell in the courtroom today?
Yes.
And what is he wearing?
Blue shirt and a yellow tie
Where is he seated?
at the defendant's table.
So you said at some point in your surveillance, you saw Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow. Is that correct?
Yes.
Explain to the jury when you first saw them.
First, we seen Chad Daybell leave the 565 Pioneer Road, and we surveilled him out to 202 North, 1900 East.
And Judge, if I could have some foundation as to time, date, place, year.
All right, Mr. Wixom, if you'd like to re-ask with more detail.
Sure. Lieutenant Powell, what date was it that we're talking about that you were surveilling and first see Chad and Lori?
November 1st, 2019.
And these addresses that you were surveilling, where were they again?
One's in Madison County and one would be in Fremont County in Idaho.
And which address was it that you first saw Chad and Lori at?
565 Pioneer Road in Madison County.
And what was the date that you saw them?
November 1st, 2019.
Recall what time of day that was?
I don't recall time.
Do you recall morning, afternoon, evening?
Morning.
Okay, thank you. So forgive me, I forgot where I left off, but what was it that you first saw them doing?
On the way down to surveil that, we also contacted Rexburg PD, so they was involved with the surveillance.
Why did you do that?
Because we was going to be in their jurisdiction.
Is that normal for law enforcement?
Yes,
Just to touch base with each other?
yes,
Did they come and assist at all?
yes, they did.
So you made that contact, then what did you do?
We followed Chad Daybell from the 565 Pioneer Road to 202 North 1900 East.
And what did they do at that location?
He went in the residence for a little while and then left. We surveilled him to Mountain America Credit Union in Rexburg, Idaho. And then we lost him after that. So we went back and surveilled the house again, the apartment.
Back that same day or a different day?
Same day.
About what time was it that you went back?
I don't know exact time. I'm guessing late morning.
What'd you see next?
We seen Lori Vallow leave and go to Sugar City to the post office
Anything else?
After there, she goes to Walgreens, and then after Walgreens, back to the apartment.
What did they do at the apartment?
Then they both go from the apartment to Idaho Falls. We surveil them to Mountain America or the Mountain Credit Union in Idaho Falls, and then the Hobby Lobby, and then the Cafe Rio.
Excuse me. What did you observe them doing, if anything, at Hobby Lobby?
Holding hands as they is walking in the store.
And let me ask, did you take any photographs of that?
I did not.
Did any other law enforcement take photographs of that?
Yes,
Do you recall who it was?
I don't recall.
Did you later see the photographs?
Yes,
Do you believe that if shown, you might be able to recognize those?
yes.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would offer what's been marked as the state's Exhibit 36B. Got 2 copies for the court.
Judge, and I'm going to voice an objection for relevance. I'm not seeing the relevance here.
All right, if I could view the exhibit, please, before I rule on the objection. Objection's been made, Mr. Wixom, as to relevance.
Judge, at this point, it goes to what's in the photo we believe shows the nature of the relationship, which isn't just relevant for this witness's testimony, but for the theory of the case overall. It helps to show the relationship between the two.
All right, I've considered the objection, given the nature of the conspiracy charges in the case, find there is relevance under 403 and will therefore overrule the objection, and the Exhibit 36B may be admitted.
Thank you. May I ask to have those handed to the witness, please? And Lieutenant Powell, even though these have been admitted, just to give context, what do you see in front of you?
Chad and Lori walking in the Hobby Lobby holding hands.
Mr. Wixom, I want to be clear. You're saying these. Is there one exhibit or more than one?
I apologize. I handed 2 up to you. It's just one exhibit, 34 or 36B, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, you bet. They're holding hands.
Yes,
So even though you didn't take this picture, do you believe that's an accurate reflection of what they were doing?
yes.
Your Honor, at this time, I would request permission to publish this to the jury.
You may.
So Lieutenant Powell, if you'll please look at the monitor up there, this photo. Since we didn't all have your vantage point, will you just explain again what they were doing to the jury?
They're holding hands walking in the Hobby Lobby.
Were they holding hands the whole time walking in?
Yes.
Now, did you go inside the Hobby Lobby?
No, we did not.
What did you do while they were inside the Hobby Lobby?
Waited outside.
And how long do you believe they were in there?
I don't recall.
But did you wait long enough to see them exit the Hobby Lobby?
Yes.
And what did they do after that?
Got in their vehicle and drove over to Cafe Rio.
What happened then? Did they go inside?
Yes.
Did you happen to go inside?
Yes, myself and Chief Deputy Gardner went inside.
Did you observe them in there?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would offer State's Exhibit 35, which is already been stipulated to be admitted, but 2 copies for the court.
All right, I understand there is no objection then based on what Mr. Wixom has proffered on Exhibit 35. Is that correct, Mr. Pryor?
It is, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right, Exhibit 35 is admitted.
Thank you. Your Honor, may I have permission to publish it?
You may.
And before I do so, could I just confirm, Judge, was that last exhibit admitted? Did I move for admission?
It was 36B is admitted.
Thank you. What is that, a picture of, Lieutenant Powell?
Chad and Lori eating at Cafe Rio.
And did you observe anything else about their behavior or conduct together while they were at Cafe Rio?
No.
What happened after they left at Cafe Rio?
We ended the surveillance.
Why did you end it there?
The time of night and prior engagements people had.
Okay. Your Honor, it would now be an appropriate time to stop my direct examination, considering the hour.
Yes, let's go ahead and take our lunch break at this time. We will try to do it in an hour, back on at 1, but we'll allow sufficient time for the jurors also to have their lunch and take the break necessary. So we'll come back on after the break.
All rise, please.
Thank you. Please be seated. All right, Mr. Bailiff, if you could please have the jurors return to the courtroom. All right, thank you, Mr. Bailiff. Please be seated. Back on the record on case CR 2221-1623, State of Idaho versus Chad Daybell. Lieutenant Powell was previously placed under oath. I'll note the parties are all present after the lunch recess, as well as the jurors are all present and properly seated, and the defendant and counsel. Mr. Wixom, I believe you were still in direct examination.
I was, Your Honor.
You can continue with your direct.
Thank you. Lieutenant Powell, I think we left off at your surveillance at Cafe Rio.
Yes.
I want to take you back now to the Gilbert phone call about Tammy Daybell's death.
Yes.
With respect to whatever was discussed there, did that cause you to feel like you needed to investigate Tammy's death?
Yes.
Why?
Because of the ties with Lori and Alex Cox and the attempted shooting, and then reviewing the report.
Which report?
The one the deputy wrote from first on scene.
What about that report caused you to feel like you should reinvestigate?
Chad said that Tammy didn't.
Into the microphone, please, Mr. Pryor.
Judge, I'm going to object. There hasn't been proper foundation. I don't know what report he's talking about. Who did it? What did it? When?
I'll sustain that in terms of general reference to a report.
Thank you, Your Honor. And to be clear for counsel, this is the stipulated Exhibit 70 that was stipulated to. It's the report.
Exhibit what, counsel?
70. Well, it's the stipulation number 70. It's that report.
Mr. Wixom, has that been admitted formally in the trial yet?
I intend to, but I haven't yet. I can stop now and do so.
I guess that'll make the most sense since we've referenced the exhibit. I want to make sure it comes in before it's referred to.
Certainly, Your Honor. Thank you. May I have just a second, please?
You may.
And Judge, that would have saved an objection if I had known.
I understand.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to hand up to the court, after defense counsel reviews it, a copy of the report from Deputy Allison Greenhall.
And it's reference 70. Is that the actual exhibit number for?
Judge, that's the itemized number on the stipulation, as I recall. The state's proposed exhibit number is 418.
418.
Yes, sir.
All right. Would you please mark the exhibit then as 418 that you propose to offer?
Certainly, Your Honor.
This is Officer Powell's report, not Officer Greenhall's report. I don't know what he meant to give me. So, you.
All right. The state's proposed exhibit 418. It apparently is referenced in the stipulated exhibit list, but is there any objection to the introduction of state's exhibit 418?
No, Judge.
All right. Exhibit 418 is admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. May I ask to have that handed to the witness, please?
Yes.
Thank you. Lieutenant Powell, you were telling the jury what were some of the reasons that caused you to have concern to reopen the Tammy Daybell death investigation?
Chad tells Deputy Greenhall that Tamara didn't have any serious medical conditions.
Let me stop you there. If you're going to refer to the exhibit to refresh a recollection, I'm going to ask the court permission to allow you to do so, but you probably shouldn't read from that.
Oh,
Is that, Your Honor, may he have permission to refresh from the exhibit?
Well, it's actually an admitted exhibit, so
Well, if he's got permission to read it, then we'll continue on.
you can ask your question, but once it's an admitted exhibit, the jury will have that.
Thank you. So go ahead then, Lieutenant Powell.
he tells Deputy Greenhall that Tamara don't have any serious medical conditions, and that she don't go to the doctor often.
Anything else in there that caused you to decide to investigate further?
Last time she was at the doctor was 2 months ago for an arm injury.
Okay. So upon reviewing that, considering the other information, what steps did you take to then investigate Tammy's death?
Ran a controlled substance, it's called PMP, Prescription Monitoring Program, where you can run a name and they'll tell you if they're on any controlled substance, medications that are controlled.
Is that a law enforcement program?
Yes.
Okay. What did you find from that?
She was prescribed tramadol.
Okay. Anything else from that report?
Not from that report, no.
So what did you do next?
Got with the prosecutor and got a search warrant for Walmart pharmacy.
Why Walmart Pharmacy?
That's where it was prescribed to, picked up.
What did you find as a result of the search warrant from Walmart Pharmacy?
She was prescribed fluoxetine and tramadol.
And what did you do next?
She was prescribed fluoxetine from Seasons Medical and tramadol from Teton Medical. So I got search warrants for those two medical records.
Did you get records from both those entities?
Yes, I did.
You know, at this time, the state would offer its proposed Exhibit 38 that likewise was stipulated to for admission, which for the record are the records of Teton Medical.
And Judge, for the record, my exhibit number 21 should mirror their exhibit number 38. If there is any differences, I'll move for mine as well. But my 21 was stipulated as well as their 38. So there is duplication there.
Okay, and to the extent it's the same exhibit, let's make sure it just gets admitted once, but what's now marked and offered as states 38, I'll have the defense review that and ask if there's any objection. As to proposed 38, any objection from the defense?
No, Judge.
All right. Exhibit 38 has been offered and is admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. May I have permission to publish Exhibit 38?
You may. The copy I've got, counsel, is essentially illegible on the second page.
Judge, if I could suggest.
Third page, I would say it's actually 3 pages.
Judge, if I could suggest my 21, you might find that to be a little more legible, but counsel, if you would like to take a look.
Let me sidebar with counsel because there's a photocopy so light that it's illegible. All right, counsel, I've reviewed the admitted exhibit. However, it's again not very legible in terms of how it was photocopied, but there is a better version of it that was likewise submitted by the defense. So upon suggestion in the sidebar, the court will permit a substitute exhibit. So what was previously admitted 38 will not be admitted, and we'll have that referenced by the defense exhibit, which is the same document in a more legible copy. So what is the exhibit number, Mr. Pryor, that would replace our exhibit 38?
Your Honor, Teton Medical Group records would be defense exhibit number 21. And
Okay.
Seasons Medical Records, which I think counsel's moving towards, it will be exhibit number 22. And my understanding, Judge, is that we've previously agreed that exhibit number 20 by stipulation is admitted as well. And I'll move for all 3 of those at this point.
Okay, the defense has moved then for those exhibits 21, 22, and 20. Mr. Wixom, any objection from the state?
No, we have no objection, Your Honor. We agree to the same exhibits, just with a more clear copy. Yes.
Okay, then those will be admitted, and to be clear then for the record, exhibit 38 is no longer admitted as part of the record, being substituted by the more clear version, so you can proceed, Mr. Wixom. Just reference the exhibit number with those new defense numbers when you are referencing them with the witness, please.
Will be, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay,
Your Honor, may I have permission to publish exhibit number 21?
yes.
Lieutenant Powell, what is it that you see on the screen?
The medical records from Teton Medical Group.
And can we explain to the jury, in your role as a lieutenant in terms of helping subordinates deal with unattended deaths, is it typical for you to get medical records and look at them?
Yes.
And you're by no means a doctor, correct?
No.
But you do review them to see if you can discern anything about the subject's health?
Yes.
What did you see in this Teton medical record about Tammy Daybell's health?
The past medical history was just anxiety, depression, and anemia. Other than that, everything appeared to be normal.
So when you when you sought a warrant for these particular records, how many years time span did you ask for?
2 years?
Was this the only record that was returned?
Yes.
What's the date on that record?
9/6 of 2019.
Does that indicate anything to you about Tammy's health status?
She was healthy at the time that she was at that doctor.
What about the fact that this is the only record? Does that tell you anything about her health status?
It appears she's healthy.
Your Honor, may I now have permission to publish the exhibit number 22?
Yes.
And please just refresh for the jury, who was the second provider that you sought records from under the warrant?
Seasons Medical.
And I want to call your attention to the screen again. What is that you see?
The medical records for Tammy from Seasons Medical.
And in fact, when you sought these records pursuant to a warrant, what time span did you look for?
2 years.
And were there any other records besides this?
No, there was not.
What's the date on this record?
10/6 of 2015.
What, if anything, did you discern from these records?
He was being seen for depression.
Anything else?
No.
What did that do to, how did that impact your decision how to go further to investigate in any way?
Yes.
In what way did it impact?
She appeared to be healthy, so I got with the prosecutors and got a warrant for exhumation.
Okay. Can you explain what the exhumation process is to the jury, please?
She was buried in Springfield, Utah, so had to get with the court in Utah, got a warrant to exhume her, and that dig her up and take her to have an autopsy done.
And that order was issued?
Yes, it was.
And did you attend that exhumation process?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, may we approach at this time?
Yes.
Thank you, Judge. Your Honor, at this time, the state would offer up to the court what we believe is a stipulated state's exhibit 37A through 37H. We've got 2 copies for the court.
And Judge, these were by stipulation of the parties as well as other photos that will be published at a later time by way of stipulation.
All right, I'll take a quick review of them.
Judge, for the record, my exhibits in that regard will be item number 23, 23A, 23B, 23A through D. You'll be my corresponding, and if there's any that aren't presented.
Okay, once you get there, Mr. Pryor, I'll have you offer them individually so we keep track of the exhibits. Exhibits 37A through H have been offered, and I understand either by stipulation or no objection, the defense has no objection to these being admitted. Is that correct?
That's correct, Your Honor.
All right, exhibits 37A through H all individually are each admitted. And Mr. Wixom, you can continue.
Thank you. Your Honor, may I have permission to publish various parts of this exhibit?
Yes.
Thank you. Lieutenant Powell, I think we had left off with you explaining why you were going to do the exhumation. Could you please explain to the jury what's that process as far as law enforcement is concerned?
Go and observe and make sure that nothing was tampered with.
And what kinds of things do you look for tampering?
Any marks on the casket, and the cement vault things like that.
And why do you look for tampering?
To make sure I can say that nothing was tampered with and to obscure the autopsy.
So is it safe to say that you were at the graveside when her body was literally pulled from the ground, or her casket was pulled from the ground?
Yes.
And you observed all that?
Yes.
Now, did you personally take photos of that process?
No.
But you were present the whole time?
Yes.
And you've seen the photos that were taken?
Yes.
And they've been admitted, but the photos, you'll be able to say if they were accurate depictions of what was happening?
Yes.
Now, if I may now publish.
Yes.
Lieutenant, can you please just explain to the jury, what are we looking at?
The backhoe getting ready to start digging the grave out.
And this is Ms. Daybell's grave?
Yes.
And where is this again?
Springfield, Utah.
Now I call your attention to what's been marked as 37B. What's that?
The backhoe digging the grave.
37C,
Them lifting the cement vault out of the grave.
37D,
The cement vault.
37E,
The lid taken off the cement vault and the casket.
37F.
The inside of the cement vault.
And I'll stop there. In the course of your observation of this part of the exhumation, did you see any tampering?
No.
What did you look at?
The edges, and then you've seen all the roses and stuff still on top of the casket.
Did you examine the casket as well?
Yes.
Did you see any indication of tampering there?
No.
And then once the coffin was removed from the vault, what happened with the coffin?
It was loaded and taken to the medical examiner's office in Utah.
And this 37, sorry, G, is that a picture of the loading of the coffin?
Yes.
Now, you said that coffin was taken to an ME, to a medical examiner.
Yes.
Okay. Did you ride in the hearse at that time?
No, I followed it.
Did the hearse and the coffin stay within your line of sight all the way to the MEs?
Yes.
And in fact, did you go inside when they put the casket in?
Yes.
Did you observe the autopsy?
Yes.
And so therefore, did you also observe the removal of Tammy's body from the casket?
Yes.
And what do we see here, Lieutenant?
Tammy Daybell's body.
Okay. Did you at that point in time look for potential tampering?
Yes.
Did you observe anything?
No.
And was Tammy's clothing eventually removed from her?
Yes.
And did you have an opportunity to view her body before the autopsy began?
Yes.
And did you see any signs of tampering at all?
No.
Lieutenant, once the exhumation was completed, did you do anything personally that furthered the investigation?
I assisted with the search warrant on January 3rd.
And what search warrant was that?
202 North, 1900 East at the Daybell residence.
And excuse me, what was the purpose of that warrant?
They was looking for electronics and other things in regards to Tammy's.
And your role in that search?
I was there helping search, and when something was found, the FBI ERT team would come photograph it and process it.
And then how were you involved at that point?
After we was all done and the FBI had processed everything, they turned it over to myself and Detective Mattingly. We loaded them in our vehicles and transported it to the Fremont County Sheriff's Office.
Was that the end of your involvement?
Yes.
At some point, was this further investigation of Tammy's death turned over to someone else in the Fremont County Sheriff's Office?
Yes, the detectives.
And why was that?
Just I had other things they wanted me to be doing and wanted it turned over to detectives.
And to be clear, as a lieutenant, how many subordinates do you supervise?
Approximately 24. Oh, no, it'd be probably about 27.
And would that include patrol officers as well as detectives?
Yes.
Okay. Is that part of the reason why you as a lieutenant would then just assign the case to a detective?
Yes.
From that point forward, did you have any other involvement in Tammy's death investigation?
No.
I may have just a moment, please.
Yes.
At this time, I don't have any further questions for direct. I did want to inquire if the two exhibits that I had been turned back into the court. I see the marshal shaking his head yes.
Yes, we do have those.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Mr. Pryor, you can
Judge,
cross.
thank you.
Once you're set up, Mr. Pryor, in order to maybe make things a little more efficient with your proposed exhibits, I'd like a brief sidebar with counsel before you start cross, just to discuss exhibits you've mentioned.
Okay, Judge.
All right, counsel, thanks for the sidebar on that. Also, just pointed out to the court before the state concluded direct, we did have admitted, not actually given to the court, Exhibit 20, which I think is a death certificate, and we need to get that to the bailiff for entry into the court record. All right, thanks, counsel. And you can commence with your cross-examination then, Mr. Pryor.
So you've, officer, you've spent 22 years with the Fremont County Sheriff's Office. Is that right?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Mr. Pryor, but can you speak into the microphone, please?
And I've been warned about this, Judge.
Thank you.
Sorry. School. You spent 22 years with the Fremont County Sheriff's Office. Is that right?
Yes.
And the last 4.5 years have been as a detective. Is that correct?
I'm a lieutenant now.
I'm sorry, lieutenant. 4.5 years as a lieutenant.
No, about 7 years lieutenant. I was 4.5 years detective.
Okay, that's what I thought I said. And then 7 years as a lieutenant.
Yeah.
Okay. So you don't get on the street and do patrol or anything like that. Is that right?
I do cover shifts, yes.
Okay. And are you equipped with a camera in your automobile?
No.
Are you equipped with a body cam?
No.
That's not standard issue for you folks?
Not for me. I do not have one, no.
Are there occasions when you feel that you need to have a body cam or a recorder?
Yeah, there's possibly some, yeah.
Okay, and would one of those be when you're interviewing witnesses or taking statements from people?
Yes.
And the purpose of that is to make sure that you get the statement accurately. Would you agree with me?
Yeah.
But there's also an aspect of that when you have a recorder or a body cam, there's no likelihood that what someone says to you could be misinterpreted. Would you agree with that?
Will you repeat that one more time?
Well, if you have a body cam or a recorder and you're interviewing someone about an important topic, well, like this case, when you interview witnesses, you want to get the facts right from what they said, correct?
Yes.
And it's important that you get the facts right when they tell you things, right?
Yes.
And it's also important that it's a tool that you use to ensure that everybody's playing on the same page. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. So it's generally a very good idea to use a recorder or a body cam when you're dealing with subjects or people that where there's serious consequences, correct?
Yes.
And in this particular case, this is a serious case, right?
Yes.
You've never been involved in as much of a serious case as you've been in this case, correct?
No.
Most serious case you've been involved in 22 years, right?
Yes.
So I would assume you took precautions that when you interviewed witnesses, you took the necessary step to make sure that you had a recorder with you. Is that right?
Yeah. Try to, yes.
Okay, try to. Okay. Now you received a call from the Gilbert Police Department, right? About this case with Tammy Daybell, correct?
Yes.
And I read your report, and I think you accurately reflected what they were talking to you about. Lori Vallow and Alex Cox were involved in an attempted shooting of Brandon Boudreaux. Is that right?
Yes.
And Chad Daybell was not implicated in that, correct?
No.
Right. But he was someone of interest because he had been hanging around Lori Vallow.
He was a known associate.
Known associate, but there was no implication that he had any involvement in the shooting of Brandon Boudreaux, right?
No.
That was Alex Cox and that was Lori Vallow. And when did that shooting take place?
I don't recall a date.
What year?
Would have been 2019.
Okay. Okay. You don't recall the month, right?
I received the call in October.
Okay. So at this point, your investigation was centered around the fact that Lori Vallow and Alex Cox knew Chad Daybell somehow, right?
Yes.
And as part of your surveillance, you were able to establish that in November, right?
November 1st.
Okay, of 2019.
19.
At that point, you were able to establish that there was some sort of a relationship between Lori and Chad, right?
Yes,
And that was after Tammy's death, right?
yes,
So really, if two people who are not married are going to a Hobby Lobby to pick up whatever they're picking up, that's not really suspicious, is it?
it depends, I guess.
Oh,
It ain't suspicious, no.
well, you said depends. I want to know what's suspicious about two people who are single going to a Hobby Lobby. Why don't you tell me what that is?
Well, it ain't suspicious, no.
Okay. And then going out to eat at a restaurant. There's nothing suspicious about two people who are single going to a restaurant to have something to eat. Is that right?
Right,
And there's nothing suspicious about Lori Vallow going over to Chad's house and being there for a short period of time. There's nothing suspicious about that, right?
no.
Okay. So I'm having some difficulty here. And the difficulty I'm having is that you get a call from the Gilbert police suggesting that Chad Daybell knows Alex and Lori, right?
Yes,
And based on the fact that they know them, you get an order from a judge to dig up Tammy Daybell, right?
with the medical records and everything, yes.
Okay. With the medical records and what's the everything?
Chad saying that she was there, she had no medical issues.
Okay. All right. Judge, could I have Judge, could I have exhibit number 21, please?
Yes.
And please bear with me, Judge. I'm sorry. It might take me 2 seconds to get this brought up.
That's fine. And before it comes up or is published, make sure, number one, we know what it is. Number two, it's admitted.
And officer, it's previously been admitted, Teton medical records, that's the medical records you subpoenaed, correct?
Yes,
All right. And 21 is already admitted. So,
It is, Judge, and I'm going to go through 20, 21, and 22.
all right. Thanks for clarifying. Those are all admitted. So you can publish without permission, Mr. Pryor, if you'd like.
So I'm at the top of Teton medical record. And what I'm looking at on the left-hand side of the letter where it says past medical history, right?
yes,
Okay. And the first thing at the very top is anemia, right?
yes.
Did you research what anemia is?
No, I did not.
Did you research what the medical conditions and what people experience as a result of being diagnosed with anemia?
No, I did not.
Did you research and look into the fact that anemia can have life-threatening consequences?
Sorry, Judge, the counsel is testifying.
Well, it's cross-examination, and I don't know what that objection is, Mr. Richmond. What's the basis?
Judge, he's describing how serious anemia is, and this witness has never spoken to that issue. So counsel is trying to testify as to how serious anemia is. It's a medical condition. This witness was freely admitting that he's.
I don't want a speaking objection. I'll sustain the objection on assumes facts not in evidence.
Okay. And let's move down the list. The next one is anxiety, right?
Yes,
Okay. And then the one down below that is depression, right?
yes,
And Tammy Daybell was taking medication. She was taking Prozac, which is fluoxetine. Is that right?
fluoxetine, yes,
Fluoxetine. Correct. And she was also taking tramadol, right?
she was prescribed tramadol, yes.
Right. And what's the tramadol for?
Pain,
Okay. So she was in some discomfort of some kind.
yes,
Okay. And then we go down below where it says family history. And would you read the 4 lines under what Tammy's family suffers as a result of family history, please?
mother suffers with cancer and thyroid issues. Father suffers with depression and heart disease.
Okay, thank you. And Judge, that's all I have for 21. Judge, could I be handed exhibit number 20?
Yes.
There's more to come in the trial of Chad Daybell. Press subscribe so you don't miss any of our continuing coverage right here from True Crime Today and the Hidden Killers podcast.